The server room hummed, a low, menacing thrum that seemed to echo the anxiety pulsing through the sleek glass walls of Innovatech Solutions. On the 55th floor, the air conditioning fought a losing battle against the heat radiating from stressed executives and overworked processors. Innovatech, a titan of predictive analytics and market forecasting, was bleeding data, hemorrhaging client trust, and spiraling towards a catastrophic system failure that threatened its very existence. Down in the lobby, oblivious to the unfolding crisis miles above, Clara Evans checked the time on her simple, practical watch. She smoothed down her plain grey A-line skirt, adjusted the collar of her crisp white cotton blouse, bought on sale, comfortable, unremarkable, and clutched her worn leather portfolio bag. Her low-heeled shoes clicked softly on the expansive marble floor, a sound swallowed by the cavernous space designed to impress, perhaps intimidate. At 41, Clara had intelligent hazel eyes behind functional wire-rimmed glasses and brown hair pulled back in a neat, no-nonsense bun. She looked like a competent librarian or a meticulous accountant, not the data visionary Innovatech desperately needed, though they didn't know it yet. She approached the reception desk, a monolith of black granite manned by a young woman whose sharp blazer and sharper expression conveyed bored exclusivity. Clara gave her name for the senior data scientist interview. The receptionist's eyes did a swift, dismissive scan, blouse, skirt, shoes, bag, and her lips thinned almost imperceptibly. "Take a seat," she instructed, gesturing vaguely towards a collection of low-slung leather chairs that looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Davies' team will call you." Clara sat, observing the subtle ballet of power around her. Couriers with urgent packages whisked away, men in bespoke suits speaking into phones with quiet authority, the hushed reverence reserved for wealth and influence. Her own quiet presence felt like a disruption, a misprint on a page of flawless corporate text. She wasn't intimidated, merely observant, cataloguing the nuances of this environment, another data point in a lifetime of navigating worlds that judged her by her unassuming cover. The frosted glass door slid open, and a junior assistant beckoned Clara. She followed him down a long corridor, the plush carpet muffling her steps, past walls adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than her car. The interview room was predictably intimidating. A long, dark wood table, high-backed leather chairs, and a panoramic window offering a dizzying view of the city sprawl. 3 figures were arranged behind the table like judges awaiting a defendant. On the left sat Marcus Thorne, head of product development, mid-40s, radiating restless energy, his tie slightly loosened, eyes sharp and impatient. In the center was Eleanor Vance, VP of Human Resources, immaculate in a tailored grey suit, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her smile polite but entirely devoid of warmth. On the right sat Dr. Jian Li, Chief Technical Officer, younger than the others, sharp eyes behind rimless glasses, leaning back with an air of intellectual superiority, fingers steepled. Clara placed copies of her resume before them. Marcus Thorne barely glanced at his, tapping a pen impatiently. Eleanor picked hers up, her eyes scanning the first few lines before flicking up to assess Clara again, a subtle frown touching her lips. "Clara Evans," Eleanor began, her voice smooth as polished steel. "Thank you for coming in. Your resume presents a certain background." The pause was deliberate. Considerable time spent at smaller firms, some academic research, quite different from the high-velocity environment here at Innovatech. Marcus jumped in, leaning forward. "Different is one word for it. Frankly, Ms. Evans, we deal with petabytes of real-time data, multi-million-dollar client stakes. Your experience with, let's see, regional market analysis and database optimization for mid-caps." He waved a dismissive hand. "It's hardly comparable. The scale here is astronomical. Can you truly handle it?" Dr. Li remained silent, observing Clara over his steepled fingers, his expression unreadable but implicitly aligned with the skepticism of his colleagues. Clara met their gazes calmly. "Scale is relative, Mr. Thorne," she replied, her voice even. "The complexity of integrating disparate data sets, identifying emergent patterns under pressure, and building predictive models that withstand real-world chaos, Those challenges exist regardless of the company's size. My work at Viridian Analytics involved unifying legacy systems across 12 acquisitions under extreme deadline pressure, resulting in a verified 15% reduction in operational redundancy. The principles of rigorous analysis and robust architecture are universal. Eleanor Vance offered a tight smile. Principles are one thing, Ms. Evans. Execution within our culture is another. Innovatech is fast-paced, demanding. We value a certain dynamism, an executive presence. Her gaze drifted pointedly over Clara's simple blouse and skirt. Your presentation, while neat, doesn't immediately convey the kind of assertive leadership we typically associate with senior roles here. The implication hung in the air. Clara looked too plain, too unassuming, too unlike the aggressive go-getters they clearly preferred. Marcus Thorne leaned back, crossing his arms. Exactly. We need people who can command a room, who can battle for resources, who look like they belong in the C-suite even if they're analysts. It's about confidence, projecting success. Can you do that? Before Clara could respond, by pointing to her track record of successfully leading teams and securing project funding through data-driven arguments rather than power suits, Dr. Lee spoke for the first time, his voice precise and slightly condescending. Let's consider technical proficiency. Your resume lists expertise in Bayesian inference and stochastic modeling. Commendable. But Innovatech operates at the bleeding edge. Quantum-inspired algorithms, neural network simulations predicting geopolitical impacts. Your listed skills seem somewhat foundational. Are you truly equipped for the complexity here, or would you require significant retraining? He adjusted his rimless glasses, his expression suggesting he already knew the answer. Clara felt a familiar weariness. They weren't assessing her skills. They were confirming their preconceived notions. Her lack of a brand-name university on her resume, her years spent achieving tangible results at less glamorous companies, her refusal to adopt the expensive corporate uniform, these were being read as deficiencies, not choices. My skills are current, Clara stated firmly. I've published recent papers on hybrid AI models, and my open-source contributions to adaptive algorithms are well documented on GitHub. The foundational principles underpin the advanced applications, Dr. Lee. Understanding the core allows for more robust and innovative solutions than simply applying black box techniques. Dr. Lee raised a skeptical eyebrow, but didn't press further, seemingly content to let his doubt linger. The room fell silent for a moment, the unspoken consensus solidifying. She wasn't Innovatech material. Marcus Thorne glanced pointedly at the expensive chronometer on his wrist. Well, Clara, he said, dropping the Ms. Evans in a move that felt like deliberate diminishment, this has been informative. He pushed his chair back slightly, a clear non-verbal cue that the interview was drawing to a close. We appreciate you taking the time to come in today. Eleanor Vance picked up Clara's resume and placed it neatly onto a small stack of other papers, effectively burying it. As you can imagine, competition for senior roles at Innovatech is incredibly fierce, she said, her voice retaining its smooth, impersonal politeness. We're looking for a very specific profile, someone who can integrate seamlessly into our demanding environment and hit the ground running with minimal oversight. The subtext was clear: you are not that person. We have several other candidates with extensive Tier 1 tech company experience to consider, she continued, offering a brief, dismissive smile. We will be in touch if we decide to move forward with your application, but realistically, the fit doesn't seem optimal at this stage. Dr. Lee simply gave a curt nod, already looking down at his tablet, his attention clearly elsewhere. The rejection was swift, delivered with practiced corporate efficiency, leaving no room for discussion or rebuttal. Clara felt a surge of frustration, not just at the rejection itself, but at the superficiality of the entire process. They hadn't truly explored her capabilities, hadn't asked probing questions about her most significant achievements, hadn't shown any interest in the innovative approaches she had pioneered. They had judged her based on the packaging, her clothes, her resume's lack of prestigious logos, her quiet demeanor, and found her wanting without ever looking inside. She gathered her portfolio, her movements calm and deliberate, refusing to show the disappointment churning within her. "Thank you for your time and consideration," she said, her voice steady. She stood, offered a polite nod, and turned towards the door. As she walked away, she heard Marcus Thorne mutter to Eleanor, loud enough to be heard, "Nice enough, but completely lacks the polish. Told you HR's pre-screening was getting soft." Clara didn't turn back. She just wanted to leave, to escape the stifling atmosphere of judgment and return to work where results, not appearances, were the measure of success. Clara's hand was inches from the heavy glass door when it burst inward. A man, his face pale and etched with frantic energy, practically stumbled into the room, closely followed by the CEO himself, Alistair Finch. Finch, normally the picture of bespoke tailoring and icy composure, looked disheveled. His tie was askew, his silver hair slightly mussed, and his eyes held a barely concealed panic. He was barking into his phone, ignoring the interview panel who had jumped to their feet in surprise and deference. "No, Kaito, rerouting the primary nodes failed. It's worse now, the data corruption is accelerating. Cascade failure imminent across all Tier 1 client servers. Get the architects back online now. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. in Tokyo." Finch slammed his hand down on the conference table, rattling the expensive water carafe. "This is catastrophic. Our core predictive engine is offline, client data is being wiped, and the fail-safe protocols aren't engaging. Billions. We're losing billions by the minute." He disconnected the call, breathing heavily, running a hand through his hair. He finally seemed to notice the stunned interview panel and the equally stunned candidate still standing by the door. "What are you all doing just standing there?" he snapped, his voice ragged with stress. "This isn't a coffee break. We are facing total system collapse. Harrison, Thorne, Lee, get your teams mobilized. Find the breach. Stop the data bleed." Marcus Harrison stammered, "Sir, we're trying, but the anomaly, it's replicating faster than we can isolate it. The quantum encryption seems to be self-interfering, somehow amplifying the corruption loops." Dr. Lee added, his usual arrogance gone, replaced by genuine fear, "The standard containment protocols are ineffective, Mr. Finch. It's like nothing we've ever encountered. The architecture itself seems to be turning on itself." Eleanor Vance just stood silently, looking utterly useless, her HR expertise irrelevant in the face of technical meltdown. The air in the room crackled with crisis, the carefully constructed facade of corporate invincibility crumbling in real time. The city view outside seemed distant, irrelevant, compared to the digital inferno raging within Innovatex systems. Clara had frozen near the door, instinctively processing the fragments of panicked conversation. Cascade failure, quantum encryption self-interfering, anomaly replicating, containment protocols ineffective. The specific technical terms, the description of the failure mode. It sparked a sudden, startling jolt of recognition. It sounded terrifyingly familiar, echoing a highly theoretical, extremely rare system vulnerability she had researched years ago during her doctoral work, a scenario dismissed by many as purely academic, too improbable to occur in a real-world system. But the conditions described by Finch and Lee matched her research precisely. A resonant feedback loop triggered by specific quantum state fluctuations within the encryption layer, causing data to effectively cannibalize itself at an exponential rate. Standard protocols wouldn't work. They would feed the resonance. She saw it clearly in her mind, the cascading effect, the self-amplification. She knew, with sudden certainty, what was happening, and more importantly, how to potentially stop it. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Her interview was over. She'd been rejected, dismissed. It wasn't her problem, but the scale of the disaster, the sheer intellectual puzzle of it, and a deeply ingrained instinct to solve complex problems spurred her forward. Taking a quiet breath, she stepped away from the door, back towards the table where the CEO stood, radiating desperate energy. "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice calm but cutting through the panic. "Forgive my interruption, but based on what Dr. Lee described, particularly the self-interference within the quantum encryption layer, have you tried introducing a phase-dampening algorithm specifically targeting the entanglement resonance frequency?" The room fell silent. The panel stared at her, aghast at her audacity. Marcus Thorne started to say, "Ms. Evans, this is highly confidential technical, But Finch, clutching at any straw, spun towards her, his eyes locking onto hers with sudden, desperate intensity. Entanglement resonance, he repeated, the term clearly striking a chord amidst the chaos. Phase dampening. What are you talking about? Who are you? I'm Clara Evans, she replied simply, stepping closer to the table. And I believe your system isn't experiencing a breach or standard corruption, but a quantum resonant cascade failure. Standard containment feeds the resonance. You need to disrupt the entanglement phase alignment, not isolate the nodes. The panel looked utterly bewildered. Dr. Lee frowned, skepticism warring with desperation on his face. That's a highly theoretical postulate, Ms. Evans, he began. The probability... Clara cut him off politely but firmly, her confidence surging as she stepped into her area of expertise. The probability is currently 100%, Dr. Lee, because it's happening. If you continue standard protocols, you'll accelerate total system collapse within the hour. She turned back to the CEO. Mr. Finch, do you have a whiteboard? Finch, bypassing his stunned executives, strode to a large whiteboard on the wall. Show me, he commanded, handing her a marker. Clara uncapped it, and the transformation was immediate. The hesitant interviewee vanished, replaced by a focused, authoritative expert. Her handwriting was neat, rapid, precise. She began sketching complex diagrams, quantum equations flowing effortlessly onto the board. The encryption relies on entangled particle pairs, she explained, her voice clear and concise. A specific harmonic frequency maintains state coherence. An external stimulus, maybe a solar flare, a specific type of attempted intrusion, even a hardware anomaly, likely pushed a critical number of pairs into a resonant frequency. Now they're oscillating in sync, causing destructive interference across the entire data structure. It looks like corruption, but it's resonance. She drew a series of feedback loops, highlighting the amplification effect. Your attempts to isolate nodes are like trying to stop an avalanche by removing one snowball at a time. You're just creating more pathways for the resonant energy. The panel watched, mouths agape. Even Dr. Lee leaned forward, his skepticism replaced by dawning comprehension and awe. Finch stared at the board, then at Clara, his expression shifting from panic to intense focus. So, how do we stop it? He asked, his voice hushed. Clara circled a key equation. You introduce a counter-frequency pulse, phase dampening, specifically targeted, precisely timed. It needs to desynchronize the entangled pairs without shattering the core encryption structure. It's delicate. You'll need to bypass the primary governors and inject the dampening sequence directly into the quantum state controller. She outlined the exact algorithm parameters, the required hardware modifications, which Innovatech likely had in their R&D labs, and the precise timing window. You have maybe 30 minutes before the cascade becomes irreversible. Alistair Finch stared at the whiteboard, then back at Clara, his mind rapidly processing the information. Her explanation was complex, elegant, and terrifyingly plausible. It fit the observed phenomena perfectly, explaining why his best teams were failing. He looked at Dr. Lee. Jian, is this viable? Dr. Lee, humbled, nodded slowly. The theory... It's sound, sir. Highly advanced but mathematically sound. If her diagnosis of resonant cascade is correct, this counter-frequency approach, it's the only thing that could work. Finch made his decision instantly. He pulled out his phone again, dialing his chief engineer. Kaito, forget containment. Listen carefully. I need you to implement Protocol Nightingale immediately. Phase dampening sequence, direct injection to the quantum state controller, parameters alpha, 7, gamma... Yes, I have them right here. He read off the precise parameters Clara had written on the board. Bypass all standard governors. Authorization Finch Omega 0. Yes, that authorization. You have 25 minutes. Go. He disconnected, the silence in the room electric. He turned to Clara, his expression one of profound respect mixed with lingering shock. Ms. Evans, he said, his voice regaining some of its usual authority but now tinged with awe. You may have just saved this company. He then looked pointedly at the utterly silent, pale-faced interview panel. Marcus Thorne, Eleanor Vance, Dr. Jian Lee. And it seems my senior leadership team was about to let you walk out the door because They didn't appreciate your understated presentation. The rebuke was quiet, but devastating. Harrison flushed crimson. Vance stared rigidly ahead. Lee adjusted his glasses, looking deeply uncomfortable. The fate of Innovatech now rested on the solution provided by the woman they had dismissed less than an hour ago. They waited, the tension mounting with every passing second, the distant city skyline forgotten, all eyes fixed on the potential digital salvation sketched out on the whiteboard by the unassuming candidate. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. Finch paced near the window, phone pressed to his ear, listening intently to updates from engineering. Clara stood quietly near the whiteboard, observing, ready to clarify if needed. The panel remained frozen, trapped in a state of horrified anticipation. Then Finch's expression changed. A slow wave of relief washed over his features. "Status," he barked into the phone. He listened, then nodded sharply. "Confirmed. Resonance levels dropping. Data integrity stabilizing. Good. Maintain dampening pulse for another 10 minutes, then initiate gradual system reboot sequence. Keep me updated." He hung up, letting out a long, slow breath. He turned to face the room, a deep sigh escaping him. "It's working," he announced, his voice hoarse but steady. "Resonance levels are plummeting. Data loss appears contained. Kaito confirms the cascade has been halted." He walked directly over to Clara, extending his hand. "Ms. Clara, I don't know how to thank you. Your insight, your expertise. It was extraordinary. You identified and solved a problem that my entire CTO division, with billions in resources, couldn't even diagnose." He shook her hand firmly. "You didn't just save the company, you likely saved my career." He then turned, his gaze falling like ice on the panel. "As for the three of you," he said, his voice dangerously quiet again. "The interview process that led to the potential dismissal of the one person capable of solving our existential crisis will be reviewed. Your judgment, your biases, are now a matter of serious concern." He looked back at Clara. "Ms. Evans, the senior data scientist role is clearly inadequate. I need your expertise at a much higher level. Forget the interview. Consider this a direct offer. Head of Advanced Analytics and Crisis Response. Name your terms." Eleanor Vance gasped softly. Marcus Thorne looked physically ill. Dr. Lee seemed resigned to the inevitable fallout. Clara considered the offer for a moment, her expression calm. "Thank you, Mr. Finch," she said simply. "I accept. My terms are that Innovatech implements mandatory, rigorous training on mitigating implicit bias in hiring and evaluation, starting with senior leadership. And," she added, glancing briefly at the humbled panel, "that performance is always valued over presentation." Finch nodded without hesitation. "Consider it done. Welcome aboard, Clara." The aftermath at Innovatech Solutions was transformative, though largely invisible to the outside world. Clara Evans, stepping into her new role as head of Advanced Analytics and Crisis Response, quickly became Alistair Finch's most trusted advisor. Her quiet demeanor remained, but her insights commanded immediate respect in meetings where her presence, regardless of her attire, was now paramount. She led the team that fully repaired the system damage, implementing new safeguards based on her research, making Innovatech's platform more robust than ever. The mandatory bias training designed with her input was rolled out company-wide. Marcus Thorne and Eleanor Vance were quietly reassigned to roles with significantly reduced responsibility and no hiring authority, their influence curtailed. Dr. Jian Li, humbled but recognizing Clara's superior expertise, became a valuable collaborator, contributing his technical skills under her strategic direction. He later admitted to Finch that his initial dismissal of her skills was based purely on academic snobbery and resume bias. Clara never lauded her position or the circumstances of her hiring over anyone. She focused on the work, fostering a culture within her division that valued collaboration, rigorous analysis, and diverse perspectives. She occasionally wore her simple grey skirt and white blouse to the office, a quiet reminder that brilliance didn't require a specific uniform. She continued to live modestly, using her substantial salary and bonuses to fund educational charities and support her family, finding fulfillment in solving complex problems and making a tangible difference, both within Innovatech and beyond. The story of her interview became an internal legend, whispered among employees as proof that true talent could emerge from unexpected places and that underestimating someone based on appearances could be a catastrophic mistake. Alistair Finch often remarked in senior meetings, "Always listen to the quietest person in the room. You never know when they might be the one holding the key." Clara Evans, the simple woman rejected at an interview, hadn't just solved the CEO's biggest problem. She had fundamentally shifted the company's perspective on what true value looked like. If this story about the triumph of substance over superficiality inspired you, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who believes in looking deeper. Comment with your thoughts on judging by appearances, and subscribe for more stories where hidden brilliance shines through. Thank you for watching. Thank you.